Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 402, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. I was wondering at what point the episode numbers would start tripping me up. Turns out it's 400. I think one episode I say, the first one I was like 400, boom, even. But then I think I said at 401 for the last episode, now 402. Poor Lindsay, my producer, had to edit it out because I said 402, and that's not right, if I remember correctly. So for whatever reason, 400 is tripping me up. It's also trippy that I've done that many episodes. That's insane. I'm so sorry that I've put this much nonsense out into the digital ether. But anyway, thanks for coming back. Those of you, I don't know why you do it, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. We've got some stories to get you caught up on. A lot of it's going to be politics, but not the, we're going to talk about people who are entering races. This isn't going to be one of those episodes where you're not going to believe what they're doing this time. So it's just more of an update so you can start looking into candidates and, things like that as we move forward. Been pretty quiet around here after having that nice trip to New Hampshire with my family. Nothing too exciting going on, so let's just go ahead and get into the news. Shrimp Gate continues. If you need a refresher, there's a link in the show notes. You can also look back at former episodes. But long story short, for those who don't remember, maybe you just need a little refresher. As I said, there was a group that decided to find out if a handful of restaurants, I think the total was 44 that they tested. They want to see if these 44 restaurants in the Charleston area were serving local shrimp or not. Of those 44 that they tested, only 4 came back as having shrimp that came from South Carolina waters. Of that total, there was a portion of those restaurants that outright, supposedly, according to this lawsuit that's moving forward, that they had lied in some capacity that they were serving local shrimp. So we've seen that some of those instances have been like just outright advertised as local and they weren't. And then we saw this case with Hyman Seafood downtown, which we're about to get into. It's a really bizarre story, but they were one of the ones that, came forward and decided to make a deal with the law firm, and we've seen some other restaurants do that as well. But in an interesting reversal, Hyman's has backed out of that resolution. And again, this is involving their alleged misrepresentation of the origins of the shrimp that they serve. This backing out of the resolution is per a lawyer, one that's been on this podcast before, Gedney Howe IV, and he's the attorney representing the South Carolina Shrimpers Association, who are just trying to, stop businesses from saying they're offering local shrimp when they're not. That's the first thing. Number 2 is whether they advertise it or not, try to figure out how they can get more local shrimp to these places. And details of the agreements have been kind of unclear. It just seems that the restaurants, have been like, oh, we admitted our, we messed up. We shouldn't be doing that. Or, hey, we didn't, we're not in trouble because we didn't advertise that we had local shrimp, but, we're going to try to do a better job of, finding sources that are local. And that's what it seemed like. It was more of like a, hey, we're going to pledge to do our best kind of thing. And then anyone who had, advertising local shrimp and didn't have it, they maybe admit fault. And it just seemed like that was kind of it. So in Hyman's situation, Howe had previously announced they had, came together in early July, and that this downtown restaurant had, quote, reaffirmed their commitment to transparency and pledged their support in our fight to save the shrimping industry, end quote. So again, it just seems like they admitted their fault, and then we're like, yeah, we're going to do better. Again, doesn't seem like that's all the only details that are out there. It doesn't appear there's any kind of like financial settlement or anything. That's what it seems like. So it's even more bizarre that they're going back on it. So it certainly feels like there's more to this story. So what the restaurant had said previously was that there was some sort of miscommunication between the restaurant itself and some social media posts, whoever was creating them for them. They had hired someone to put out, things on social media. Whoever they had hired had mentioned local shrimp in some posts, and that they were going to put in some measures, put some measures into place to make sure that doesn't happen again. Seemed like an honest mistake, didn't seem like a big deal. It seemed like that was the end of it. Now, for whatever reason, as I said, Howe is mention that the agreement that he reached with the restaurant will not be honored, and it has chosen to oppose the efforts of the South Carolina shrimpers in court. So again, it's very bizarre. It seemed like, no big deal. They admitted silly miscommunication. We're going to fix it. We're going to put measures in place so it doesn't happen again, and we're going to do our best. Support local. Blah blah blah. To outright saying they're going to go ahead and take it to court, which I thought that the trade off was just by saying, "Hey, our bad, we'll do better." I thought that was the end of it. It makes me feel like maybe it wasn't, and it's unclear why they're backing out or what other details we don't know. So this story is from ABC News 4. They spoke to Howe, and he said that he expects Hymans to file responsive pleadings in court within the coming days. So maybe we'll have some more information at that point. ABC News 4 did reach out to Hymans for comment and had not heard back as of their posting and me recording this. So again, just interesting that not only has one gone back and said, no, we don't want to do this resolution, they're like outright going to fight in court about it after all. And especially a situation that seemed like not a big deal. So again, there's something we're missing, I'm missing, media hasn't uncovered yet or hasn't been shared by the restaurants or how, for whatever reason, whoever knows why, it just hasn't gotten out there yet. So something to keep our eyes on for sure. All right, plunging into politics here for a little bit. The reason there's so many announcements lately, the filing window has closed for a lot of local elections in town. Not all places, but some of the bigger names, Mount Pleasant and Charleston specifically. And so with that, we now know who is going to run, and it's too late for anyone else to jump in. So Will Haynie, who is the incumbent mayor in Mount Pleasant, will face two challengers. And one that was previously announced was a gentleman by the name of Irvin Evans. But the most recent one is a gentleman by the name of Curt Thomas, who is a veteran and former lawman. And this is information from ABC News 4, who got it from the South Carolina Election Commission website, which, by the way, anyone has access to. So you can go look up things about candidates on there. So for some background on Thomas, he served in the U.S. Air Force before joining the South Carolina Highway Patrol as a state trooper. In addition to that, he's also an author and fitness coach. Plus, he's a public speaker, and he says that he has membership at the National Speakers Association. He has a campaign Facebook page that is up. There's not a ton of information on there. It's a lot of generic, things like he says he's running for, quote, stronger leadership, smarter decisions, and safer communities, end quote. These things are especially these first announcements. They're very light on the things that they're going to do and are more general like that. So someone that if you live in Mount Pleasant, want to may look into. As I said, he'll be running against the incumbent, Will Haynie, who in late June announced that he was going to run for a third bid as the town's mayor. He was first elected in 2017, and then he followed that up with a pretty big victory in 2021, claiming 58% of the vote. So we got three folks running for mayor of Mount Pleasant, assuming none drop out between now and Election Day. So again, for those of you on that side of the Ravenel, time to start looking at those candidates. And we got some more to discuss here in the next segment. So I'm going to go over a couple other announcements and, that are a little bit more on the interesting side. This current story, the details are coming from the Charleston City paper. I encourage you to visit the link in the show notes because I'm not going to cover everything. And it also includes like dates that people can still file if they're thinking about running for different towns and different offices. So definitely worth checking out, as I'm not going to highlight everything. Just some of the big headlines, one of which is that 5 of 6 Charleston City Council races that'll be taking place this November will be contested. So we will have pretty much every seat. There's going to be someone trying to take down an incumbent. And that includes 2 longtime incumbents, Robert Mitchell and William Dudley Gregory. And this could be some tough competition for them. So the only person running unopposed is the current, obviously, he's a current council member and he's an attorney, Mike Seekings. He's been on this show many times in the past. He represents Downtown District 8. So he is running unopposed. If you're wondering, it's not every council seat that is up. They do them kind of in different years. So this election cycle, it's odd numbered council seats. So if you're in District 1, District 3, so on and so forth, those are the ones that are up. All right, if you're wondering, no, that's not how many council seats there are. There's actually more than that, but they do the elections a little differently. They don't do all the seats all at once or anything. So this election cycle, which you'll vote in November, this coming November, is even numbered seats. So District 2, District 4, so on and so forth. The odd number council seats and the mayor's office in the city of Charleston, they will be next up for election in 2027. So that's why you're only hearing about certain seats and nothing about the city of Charleston mayor's office. All right, so back to the seats that are open. There is one incumbent that we know is not coming back. We talked about that previously. That's Caroline Parker, who currently represents James Island in District 12. She already announced that she is not running for re-election. So Parker is out. We know that. And whoever will take her seat is a newcomer, essentially, to politics, at least running for office. Those folks are going to be, I've talked about two of them previously, nonprofit CEO Leslie Scardon and marketing professional Deanna Miller. The third, who I hadn't mentioned and ended up filing, is someone by the name of Annette Begner. Don't know much about Annette, but again, more stuff will come out as we get closer to the election. And if you're in any of these districts, be sure to visit the link in the show notes or look up these folks so you know who you're voting for. All right, going down the other even numbered seats again, we're going to jump all the way back to the beginning. District 2, Kevin Sheely is the incumbent. He's an insurance agent, and he's going to face another newcomer, Abraham D. Champagne, and this is a seat that represents voters in West Ashley. In District 4, that longtime incumbent Robert Mitchell that I mentioned earlier will face three challengers, a creator named Susan Allen, a nonprofit executive named Aaron Polkey, and a past candidate, Luckman S. Rashid. And this is a peninsular seat that includes Hampton Park, the Charleston Neck neighborhood area, and the east side. Over in District 6, we have another veteran incumbent that I mentioned already, William Dudley Gregory. He's going to be facing Charleston restaurateur Ben D'Alessandro of D'Al's Pizza fame, and healthcare consultant Sarah Spangler. This is the west side district of the peninsula. And then I already mentioned District 12, so the last one is District 10. Incumbent Stephen Bowden, who was on this podcast when he announced that he was first running for this seat. He's going to face civil engineer William Connor. This is another West Ashley district. And as I mentioned, plenty of others have announced. There's all sorts of other races going on. Visit the link in the show notes so you can see specifically whether any of your districts are included in that, or your town has already ended their filing, and so you know who's running, or you can find out when does filing close for your town, and then you'll know when to start looking out for people making announcements. Last two stories are about some housing updates that we have. One is that Dockside community downtown. You may remember there's 133 condominiums and townhomes. They were forced to evacuate. I recently recapped this because there was talk of a lot of those buildings, the condominiums and townhomes, had been selling for way under what they would have sold before this evacuation order came. And so there was another update, and that's that the owners of those 133 properties, again, whether as a condo or a townhome, they voted overwhelmingly on August 14th against taking any action as far as repairing the tower that city officials evacuated back in February over safety and structural concerns. So this includes, if you remember, the condominiums, the tower, got evacuated, and even places around that tower, townhomes included, they were forced to evacuate. The concern being, of course, that the tall tower could come down, cause damage, hurt people, etc. So all but one owner ended up rejecting the estimated $151 million repair bill, which on average, if you're wondering, would have cost each unit over $1 million each. So considering everything they've been through, the fact that they've been probably paying for housing somewhere else in some capacity, and just everything, not a big surprise that they voted against repairing it. But they had to take this vote. It was a necessary step towards selling the property. That's according to the Dockside Board of Directors. So now that they voted against it, they can sell it, and then whoever buys it, they can move forward with whether it's repairs or tearing it down, and obviously there's also, it's not just they can buy it and just do whatever. There's all this stuff in the background, especially as it comes to repairs and tearing things down. If you're going to rebuild, that's going to take a bunch of stuff with the city and county and blah, blah, blah. So it does not seem we're close to any sort of real resolution yet, but this was another step in the process. And the other update is from one of our earliest episodes. I know this property came up more, but I think it's been a few years since we've really had an update. So, the longtime listeners will remember the Joseph Floyd Manor. And if you don't remember from this podcast, you may just remember it from being in the news. And we've interviewed people about this property and the concerns there. Well, we have some good piece of news. That is that the fact that the Charleston County Housing Authority is using a recently awarded state grant to fund about $2 million in repairs and maintenance at that building property. Again, that name is Joseph Floyd Manor. It's that high-rise apartment building that is, what are the streets? I think it's at King and Mount Pleasant streets on the Upper Peninsula. It's a high-rise apartment, like I mentioned, and it's situated, or it's set aside for low-income seniors and disabled residents. And so the problem, if you remember, is that we were told back in 2020 that the building had received failing grades from federal inspectors. And this happened after the Post and Courier first reported that residents were complaining about all manner of things that were wrong inside this building, including things like bed bugs, other vermin, rats, mice, etc. And of course, there was maintenance, things that need to be repaired and fixed. And then they got another failing grade in 2022, and that's probably the last time we talked about it on this podcast. Um, they've tried to think of all different sort of things to try to fix this, and you may remember there's the issue of funding. There's just not unlimited funding to do all the things that need to be done, and they were looking into that. So this $2 million that they got from a grant is good. Hopefully it'll go to very necessary improvements for the people who live there, some of the most vulnerable among us, low income and disabled veterans, or residents rather, which could include veterans, of course, but I meant to say disabled residents. So that's a good thing. Now, there has been talk in the past of just tearing down the building and then redeveloping it. It's been around since 1955, not exactly a new building. Obviously, you heard about the issues it's having, but that plan seemed to sputter out. And the authority's current CEO, whose name is Angela Childers, she was hired in 2023. So after these, two failing reports, or well, failing grades, I should say. And that year, so 2 years ago, said that rehabilitating the 13-story building floor by floor rather than just completely tearing it down would be the best case scenario. So that's what her feelings were. She, for the record, declined to interview requests from the Post and Courier, who, first put out this information about the repairs. And so it's unclear what exactly that money will go, like what specifically that money will go to, what other things have already been improved and are fixed in this building. But again, even with that little bit of secrecy, whether intentional or not, it's good to know that $2 million, a pretty good chunk of change. I know in the grand scheme of things, especially with a building that big, it might not be, might just be a drop in the bucket of what's needed, but it's certainly good that they're getting some money. Again, just a property that really needs to be taken care of considering the people who live there. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio, and not a moment too soon. This was a struggle for me for some reason. Thankfully, my producer extraordinaire, Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Soundsystem, is going to be the only person who has to deal with that. And for that, I am sorry, Lindsay, and I appreciate you. She's so great at her job. You're not going to hear all the mess ups I did. And boy, it was a record today. In any event, thank you for listening. I also need to say thank you to Tyler Boone, in addition to Lindsay. Tyler Boone's music can be heard in each and every episode of the show. I'll be back with you on Friday. I'm already looking forward to it. But until then, good night and good luck.